call to order the November 17th Park Trails and Lakes Commission meeting. Do you want to do roll call or?
Yes. Terry Steenblock.
Here.
Tim Miller.
Here.
Jason Steenblock. Doug Ramseth.
Here.
Tim Gary. Karen Moorhead.
Here.
Betty Geyer.
Here.
All right, and then we'll look for a motion to approve the agenda with one adjustment, striking 5A, which is the review of the meeting minutes.
I move we approve the agenda with the striking of 5A.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do you want to roll call it, or do you just want to have us raise our hands? Do you have a preference?
I'll roll call it because Karen's just on audio. So Terry Steenblock.
Aye.
Tim Miller.
Aye.
Doug Ramseth.
Aye.
Karen Moorhead.
Aye.
Betty Geyer.
Okay.
All right, next on the agenda is open forum. And Jamie, I see some names here. I'm not sure if they're part of another agenda item or if they're here for the open forum.
No open forum submissions received to the City of Forest Lake. So any guests that we have are regarding our regular agenda item, Farm Parkland dedication request.
Okay. All right, if there are no open forum, then we'll move right on to that one, which is 5B, the Taylor Farm Park dedication request. And I'm assuming Donovan?
Oh, hang on, Donovan, you got to unmute you. All right.
All right, thank you. I apologize for that. Thank you, Chair Steenbach and Parks, Trails, and Lake Commission. I'd like to present for your consideration a parkland dedication for the Hidden Creek Taylor Farm development. I'd like to kind of run through the staff memo a little bit, to kind of describe again the process in which the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission makes a recommendation to City Council, who make the final decision on the parkland dedication, and offer some staff recommendations. And then I'd like to take questions. Also, I see Kelly Jordan and Paul Brugerman from the project team are also with us on this Zoom meeting. And have them answer questions if the commission has any for them, or provide more information if they desire. And have a health discussion, and maybe we'll come up with a recommendation. I'd like to show, and if this looks familiar, it's because we did last spring look at this property, also with Mr. Brugerman. This time his son Nick is also part of the project team. And can you see my screen right now? I'm showing the project.
There you go. Thank you for making it a little bigger.
Yeah, so it's a 60-acre parcel. It is adjacent to city water and sewer. And this is also being reviewed by the Planning Commission tomorrow night. Of course, there's some different components that they, through the lens of the zoning code, look at. But the zoning code does specify that at this initial screening, it's really the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission takes the first bite of this apple. And what the zoning code does say for parkland dedication is it sets a basic, 10% or of land or equivalent market value of the property as a parkland dedication. Since it's something of a pretty inexact science to determine what that market value is, and in an area that has lots of wetlands, I think it's something more of a kind of a collaboration between the developer and the city as far as what the parkland dedication is for this, and whether it's in this case probably some combination of both land and improvements upon that land and trails. And so kind of within the context here is the Parks, Trails, and Lakes map for 2040, which also shown here shows a regional park about a half-mile south. If you can see my cursor, kind of where that blue street ends is approximately where, and north of the curving green future Headwaters Parkway line. So in this case, that's why the city, staff so far has been encouraging the dedication of land to promote more community, a more cohesive sense of neighborhood within this area, but also understanding that a much larger dedication would be required south of here. And you're not, as part of that to achieve that 2040 goal. Also, part of this is kind of the within the context is, you'll see here in a moment, kind of where the staff is, where they're so far. This is a conversation with city engineer and public works and city administrator and Jamie around how does one create more of a network of trails that we've already been establishing. And this figure that I'm showing kind of gives you the rough idea of how there's a trail already along the north side of Headwaters Parkway. If we continue with the trail along here, even though there's sidewalk here on this part of Enfield, it does connect to a trail that goes to a dedicated pathway up to 202nd Street, and then again meets another trail, which then goes into Fenway Fields. So there's part of a larger context here, and what the staff has thought of, and this is kind of what taking our view of this, and for the commission's consideration. I'm also going to show here kind of what the concept plan that has been submitted. And essentially, let me zoom out here a little bit. What we have here is Headwaters Parkway to the south, there's Enfield Road stub ended in the north, and a road network that basically circles a 4.9 acre park area with 4 trails that are proposed within this concept plan to join the streets to the park area. And so we have that here, kind of in the southeast. We have this other one on the east, and then a proposed one in the north, and then proposed one on the west. So that's what the project team has pulled forward. Now, what we see is that in order to connect it better to the north, to the Enfield sidewalk, how about this trail be moved over one lot, and so it kind of lines up better with that section of Enfield. Also, to thinking about that more regional trail network, if there was another trail easement here, and these are proposed 20-foot wide easement areas for a 10-foot trail plus 5 feet on each side for a maintenance, just able to get a vehicle in there if needed, and just provide some decent space for that. So this would be another one to the south, but then this would also continue as a trail all the way along here and then toward the rear of these properties, and then joining up with that Headwaters trail that I mentioned earlier. So in red, you're seeing the proposed trails that are, shifting one, adding one, and then kind of tying in this other into another network. And of course, this is when other lots are added, this one would be a connection without any driveways running across it to this, and provide more of a direct route through here. And so what I see is that, some points of discussion for the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission is, do you like these trails? Do you like where this city staff is consider them to be, where the developer is proposing them? What do you think about this kind of Central Park area? What sort of improvements would you like to see in those? And this is, in a recommendation to council. And And is there anything we've missed so far? With that, I'd like to open up to questions from the commission.
So Donovan, this is Doug Ramseth. The trails going through there, through the park that's proposed, are the trails paved through the park?
Yes, when we say, generally with the city staff, when we say trail, we mean a 10-foot wide bituminous trail.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that, the city kind of, and these are all, dedicated upon, a project completion, dedicated to the city. Kind of a part of that, the bargain is that the city then maintains that. So we're maintaining the asphalt. Public Works is plowing them in the winter. Not on the priority. Streets get plowed first, but they are maintained in the winter. And trails are the 10-foot wide bituminous.
Okay, so the trail that shows on the north and the south, they connect with a bituminous trail all the way through the park.
Yes, that's what we've.
All right, thank you.
We're recommending. Yeah.
Can you say all the way through the park, it would go through that trail easement section of the picture and then pick up on between 95 and 96, for example?
Correct. And I'm also imagining that the trail continues through that park space, but we didn't want to be too prescriptive. And of course, but this is kind of, this is how we, this is how we see it so far.
Okay.
Would say Donovan, Tim Miller here. Would any equipment or anything for the park itself go in that, or would that go back to city?
I believe part of the park dedication would be some improvements. What that looks like, I think, is more in your jurisdiction. Is it the tot lot? Is it a picnic shelter? That sort of thing, and that's coordinating also with what Jamie would like. We're looking for a dog here. Excuse me. What is she doing in there? Come on, Amber, hop up. She'll say hi too. Here, Amber. Oh yes.
Oh, yay, hi.
Pretty golden.
There's a ninth edition.
Go. Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize she was there.
Donovan, you said the trail would go right through the park. Is that going to limit us what we can do with that park space? Are you talking about a paved trail right across the parkland?
I think at least one paved trail that runs, in that north-south corridor.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's our idea. I'm definitely open to what you all see. You all you are the park experts here. It's just that this one really does be working toward getting a more complete network, and that's what we're seeing in the next few years is some really big trail development. That was discussion last night at the city council workshop with some of these county reconstructions on 11th Avenue Southwest and Everton. We're going to see, more trails being developed and that network expanding. So this is in that net, kind of within that that flow.
I guess Betty Geyer. So I do think adding more trails or connecting what we have really does fit in with our long range planning as well. Right? Are there any issues with where the trails are going? Being newer?
I don't think there's an issue with me. I was just wanting to make sure that we remember what we're going to do with the rest of the land, and certainly connecting parks is good for everyone. And yeah, just have to look at what that whole picture looks like.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
But I like the way they moved them over to match. What city staff did, I think, was a good idea.
Agreed.
Yeah, so you're still crossing the road and then you're picking up that short trail across from Enfield that runs around to 202nd Street, right? And then goes east on 202
Correct.
and then over to Fenway and back around. Okay.
Mm.
So Donovan, is there an option here to look at only allowing for the trail connection and then taking funds for the remainder of the money? And the only reason why I asked this, I brought this up back in April, right? We've got Leela over there, we've got Fenway, we've got Eagle Bluff, we've got Summerfield. So we've got 4 parks in that area already. And I'm a little bit concerned just in, I don't know if the rest of you watched the budget meeting last night, but there's clearly a need for funding for the parks, and there was no, well, I shouldn't say no, I think it was $50,000 or $60,000 investment in the parks infrastructure. So it's clear that the funding at this point isn't going to come from anywhere else other than park dedication fees unless something changes. And we would be foregoing $300,000 here that maybe would pay for a piece of Belts Park or, sorry, no, I've got a barking dog.
What is the amount of money that comes in from this development for park development?
Well, if there's 120 lots, right, Donovan, and it's still 2,500.
Correct. Yeah.
So we would be looking at $300,000 if that formula is still accurate. And then if we didn't take this land, would the developer put more homes on this land, which would increase it? Or what's the logic behind the developer wanting to use this portion of land to in lieu of the park dedication fees?
Well, I think there's, in our discussions, I think staff has really pushed for the park area as kind of that community gathering space. But if the if the park wasn't there, that land wasn't dedicated, yeah, the developer, I mean, it's good high ground. The developer would put lots there, do reconfiguration. I'm sure he would look at something close, something, I mean, he probably may have already done some concepts of more of a gridded streets within there. So he'd come forth with another plan, but almost any of these plans would have some north-south roadway that could be the site of that a trail that could be that connective trail that we've discussed.
As you mentioned earlier, the 2040 plan has a park just south of that. So maybe, and as Terry said, we have a number of parks in the vicinity. So maybe having that southern park south of that would suffice for that, being close to that community development as well. So I'm coming along with Terry that maybe getting the park dedication fees as opposed to land would make more sense.
I'll also remind you that I mean, this is meant to be more of the neighborhood park, and the one south there is kind of more of a regional park, and that could be in that 15 to 20 acre range. I mean, much different as far as recreational amenities go.
Karen Moorhead, I'm just thinking of it looks like a wonderfully built community, and to me it just reaches out. So many people today are staying close to home and not wanting their kids to be far enough away. And it's not a large area, but I think it could be developed for that community. I don't know. I'd have to go out and walk and see those others, how close they are. But I know I'm just really in favor of having things close to them. And I know it's money, but it's also community and it's families. So I'd have to really weigh that back and forth.
Miller, were you going to say something?
Yeah, Donovan, thanks, Terry. Donovan, I was just going to ask, I guess I didn't quite understand the answer to Terry's original question. What is the impact of, is there, I mean, the trails, are they going to be there regardless of the park dedication fees, or land swap?
Well, we're gonna have, we're gonna have sidewalks. That's a standard that, is for neighborhoods. The trail piece is kind of above that. And what the zoning code does allow is kind of what Terry's hinting at, some combination of both an improvement and, cash in lieu of land. So it's, and there's a formula for that. It gets a little more complicated because you're talking about what is the equivalent market value, what is the cost of the construction and dedication of that improvement, and and the land, the easement dedication for the connection. Well, if there is any kind of extra easement required. So certainly that's in the universe of options, is to do some blended approach.
Because otherwise there would be, so if you looked at 95, 94, 93, there would be a sidewalk there that would loop all the way around back to Enfield, which would then get you back on that little trail if we chose not to even do the trail option, right? There'd be a sidewalk.
Well, if you recall, even with the, I think it was a smaller park space with that, I think it was March or April. And you saw some version of this. There was a much, there was a more direct north-south road coming from Headwaters Parkway up to Enfield. So, it wouldn't, I can imagine a situation where there'd be, extra, a trail on one side of the street. And that could serve as that, connection between Headwaters Parkway and Enfield.
Eddie, were you going to say something?
I just had a question. What kind of housing units were these again? Were these the single level detached townhomes?
I believe some of them, well, it's not specified. At this concept stage, given the narrowness of the lots, there's many of them that are 65 feet wide. I wouldn't be surprised if they were that type of model, and that's something that we're seeing right now built in the main section of Headwaters 12, over by kind of a little bit east of here. But yeah, right now we're just kind of mapping out the street network, general area of lots. You don't see any stormwater ponds here, so those will be added in. So it's still pretty preliminary as far as those kind of details.
Okay, I thought I remembered from the April meeting that that's what they were. So. Okay, thank you.
So what's the plan to, is it just going to be grass? What's the cost to maintain this and then also to put equipment onto it? And where does that fall in relation to the priorities and the other things that, again, I'm going to use belts as an example. We did this huge study on belts and looked at what it would cost to do that. So in essence, we would be buying another piece of land that comes with no funds to put equipment on it or to maintain it, unless there's a strategy to maintain it and to buy equipment for it. So is there a strategy along with this proposal that would include the purchasing of equipment and maintenance?
Well, I haven't done the math on it, but I believe that this amount of, parkland dedication, wouldn't add up to that 10% of the land or market equivalent that, that's in the zoning code and, that table I showed you earlier. So I believe that there are funds that are available for the developer to, place some improvements in there. And that's what I encourage the the commission is to look at what would you like to see there. And I mean, as far as the maintenance, yes, I mean, that is part of the ongoing thing, and that's something I know that Jamie and Dave Adams wrestle with to make sure they do that right every year. But that's something that I'd like to engage the commission in right now with the discussion. I mean, what do you think? What do you all want to see here?
Well, who's paying for it? Let me just clarify that. I mean, so if we put a park here and it's between, let's say a typical park between 300,000 and 500,000, are we taking this land and the developer is also putting a $300,000 to $500,000 park on this? Or are we just getting the land and then we have to work into the existing park budget equipment and maintenance? And the reason why I keep asking this question is because we're struggling to get dollars to maintain our existing parks and green space. So are we adding another burden on top of this that we don't have any funds to maintain or do anything with?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I mean, yeah, I'd like to be clear that I think that as part of the Parkland dedication requirements, some improvements, would be part of this. And the developer would build those and then dedicate them to the city. It wouldn't be in the range of a $300,000 to $500,000 Belts Park type improvement, but it would be something that I think would, just even having the space there is an amenity, and in some ways, I think also this is what kind of stamps this as a neighborhood that is more than just a collection of lots for people coming to Forest Lake saying, this is something unique here. I think there's a part of that is amenity that attracts people to the community. And I don't mean to, discount your concerns. And I understand that, that funding for new improvements isn't there. I mean, I'm trying to get you more apartment buildings built, and we'll probably see a.
It's not. Funding comes outside of just park dedication fees, right?
But I'm trying to
the strategic plan and it's an important investment. Funding comes from other places. And when we can't even make the 10-year strategic plan as a placeholder, it makes me question whether or not we're going to have any money it's going to be grass. And does grass draw people? I assume grass drives up the value of 86, 87, 88, 89 to sell those because it's open area behind them. But I will get off my soapbox now, but that is my major concern here is that we have a list of parks that we're trying to maintain and upgrade now that we can't afford to do. And now we're going to add an additional space to maintain and upgrade that we don't have funds to maintain and upgrade long-term. And no guarantee that we're going to get funds. So are we going to rob Peter to pay Paul here again is my only concern.
Terry, I'll get on my soapbox and off of it quite quickly too, because I still look at it as a community that would really draw people and families and would be part of the entire development's long-range look. I don't anticipate putting a large-scale park development right there, but I think having green space gives us a little room to think of some things that we would still have a community park there. And so, you have to look at the dollars for sure. But when you get park dedication dollars, I like to think that we put them back into the development somewhat. That I know when I was on the park, but before we couldn't take that money and then put it into belts because it was to be used in the development agreements. So I don't know how that all washes out, but my thought is I'm still more for a community park than not. I don't know how big that space is. That might help me too. Doesn't appear that it's very big.
Excuse me, this is Paul Bruggeman. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for your time. We appreciate this opportunity to talk to you guys. Just to give you a little background on who we are, we did the Summer Fields development. if you're familiar with that in the park and how that all laid out as one large park. Just kind of backing up 10,000 feet, talking with the staff, figuring out, you know, do you want a larger park like that in the middle of this development, like Summerfields, or do you want more of these, you know, neighborhood pocket lots, parks? But this is almost 5 acres, and our net buildable acres here is about 40 acres. So we're actually, if we're talking about the ordinance and where we fit in there, we're actually, the land that's shown on here is more than what is required. So back to the question of funding for the improvements, I, you know, just unless there's something I'm misunderstanding, I don't think there are funds in this. Personally, if you've been in Summerfield, the park is kind of the main focal point of the whole neighborhood. Everybody drives by it on both main intersections or travel roads in there, or driveway, or, you know, main roads in there. That's kind of what I like to do, but I also understand that there are some needs for some smaller pocket lots, especially for younger families with little kids, you know, closer to their homes. And we are certainly open to do or work with the city any way that you guys, you know, want us to. But I guess that's just my feedback on it. And I don't know how much further south, Donovan, that regional park is, but if that's going to be on this, is it outside of the 120-ish acres that I'm developing? The other 2 pieces south, is it, so it's south of there even more?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. So then I'm assuming those next phases that we will go through will be a park fee that would contribute to that and its improvements.
I mean, that, of course, that will, with, you know, succeeding developments, we'll probably have this similar conversation again with the park commission around what, you know, what's most appropriate. So I mean, I can't predict that, whether, you know, what it'll be, land or fee in lieu of.
Okay, it may be maybe a smaller park with some tot lot improvements in this location would be more desirable than, because it is, I mean, 5 acres is in my mind is a big piece of open land. Maybe it isn't in the world of a park, but to me, I mean, it seems like a big park, 5 acres. I mean, considering that most lots are 1/3 of an acre, this is roughly
Yeah, I
5
think
acres.
Paul Tim Miller here. I think part of the bigger thing here isn't, I mean, we can all agree that it'd be great in these developments, much to Karen's point, to have these parks. And our issue as a commission is that we don't have the funds, as Terry said, to pay for them. So if there's not improvement, 5 acres it's a big space of land. You know, and if we can't do anything with those. So I agree that, to your point, it is a nice big space of land, and in these new communities, you know, really benefit from having them. But unfortunately, from our standpoint, the budgets don't.
Yeah, so that maybe Terry compromises to do a smaller park. Again, I call it a tot lot. You know, more for the younger kids to play and hang around with smaller equipment, and have the equipment and the park as part of this development. Again, you know, it's up to you guys and Donovan, of course, and how you want to go forward. But I'm agreeing, I guess it's with Terry, that is like, okay, we've got all this land, but in my mind, there isn't money to do anything with all this land in our development, unless I'm misunderstanding something. And I guess I would need direction from Donovan on that.
Yeah, I don't, you know, I mean, I think it's, you know, I haven't done the math on it. What I'm, you know, and I think when you look at, you know, I calculated 4.9 acres for that central area. Part of my thought around that is, you know, so there can be some portion of that that's going to be stormwater ponding, and just kind of given where else it's going to go, you know, and so that's kind of where, that would be taken out of that 4.9. So that's, I mean, Paul, you maybe end up being right on that. But I just want to explain a little bit more my reasoning around the idea that there's going to be, some more, at least some money for improvements or, or trails as well.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of the highest point of the neighborhood. If we were going to do something with a park in combination with ponding, I think it'd be, and I certainly like having a pond associated with the park just because it allows or makes it feel more open and more open space, but it maybe be to the southern area or the south piece. But again, we want to work with you guys and make this a great neighborhood. So, and again, we appreciate your time and I encourage the feedback, and I guess I'm hoping that's what, just open dialogue to figure out what the best thing to do for everybody.
Appreciate that, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Donovan, how big is the stormwater ponds going to be? Because it's already the north side of that is already pretty swampy. And you've got I used to live right on that, I don't know, swamp is what we called it.
Oh.
So I don't know what the technical name is, but you're already kind of swampy on that north side. So how much more of this parkland would be out of that 4.9 acres? How much of it would be additional water, wetland?
We're really at the beginning, that's an engineering question, and we're really at the preliminary point. What my thought is around this, and this is kind of getting more into just subdivision design, is that on those outer edges, there's like Paul says, I mean, there's something like 20 acres of wetlands, the kind of the area that's kind of the hatched area. I could bring it back up, but maybe I'll do that so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I don't design these, but I'm thinking that maybe on the eastern side, the way the land is sloping there'd be a portion of that, but I really have no idea of what kind of acreage that would be.
Does any of the other commissioners see any kind of compromise on a smaller area or not?
Well, I just have Commissioner Steenblock, who's not here tonight. He did email me just some comments on this one that I said I would read and share with the commission in his absence. So he said, I'm not able to attend our meeting tonight, but I'd like to speak on the Parkland dedication. I am not in favor of taking the land. At our former meetings, we talked about the land with Patrick, and we cannot afford it. We cannot revitalize our existing parks with the funds we have now. Looking at the diagram and reading the staff notes, the parkland would be somewhat of a drainage area in that park. When a development is in the process, it seems like we're getting the piece of land that's not average. On a separate note, we, the city, have to come up with some funding ideas. Example, putting on a tax on real estate, whether buying or selling. And the Parks, Trails and Lakes just finished paying off $1 million Fenway project. So he's more in favor of taking the funds. So thanks for listening. So that's just passed on from Commissioner Steenblock, who's not here. So, but I know, Karen, you'd mentioned your comment was if there's a conversation to go into compromise or talk about some revisions to this existing plan. Is that what you're looking
Correct.
to
I just,
do?
realizing that maybe there's a middle ground here for something, but I didn't know what the ones that are here, what they would think.
Go ahead, Betty.
So the only other thing I thought of, and maybe it's a lose-lose, I don't know, is taking the land, but leaving it green space. Because there's some value to making sure we've got good green space in our community as well. That does then we don't get the funds that would help. But the maintenance would be much less too. We wouldn't be but I don't know if that provides the value to the neighborhood either. So it was just another thought. I don't know that it's got a whole lot of upside.
I think it's a good thought to have some green space also, but a smaller park and some green space. I mean, I don't know what the numbers turn out to be, but I see something of value with taking part of it for some kind of a park.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, Karen. I don't know, do we have that? Are we able to make that decision today based on the information we have? That's my concern.
Right.
Could we get a new updated drawing that shows actually what this would look like with the ponding built in here? And so really give us an idea of what we would be acquiring here and what that would look like.
I think I hear a couple things just listening and taking notes to the conversation. Going to the initial part of the conversation, the trail connections, I think that's really favorable to all commissioners. Seemed pretty much in consensus with that piece. Is very desirable to have that connection with the other existing trails. So I think that's something that we're really interested in based on this conversation. And then it seems like we just need a little, maybe some more information on if we went with this 5 acres, how much of that would be the stormwater ponds, and if or what other amenities would there be included, if any, and if there's some developer cost to contributing to the equipment for the park. And then it also sounds like maybe looking at kind of a compromise, maybe a slightly smaller parkland to service that neighborhood, but maybe something that would allow for the developer's funds to help put something there so that it's almost a completed project. The city would then assume maintenance, so mowing, any repairs and maintenance to equipment or whatever we might have in there. Because then it's not something that we're just waiting on funds. We have a completed project. Does that seem like what you guys are looking for? Maybe like another alternative option where it can almost be a complete project if we do a park there?
Or leaving it, like Betty said, with green space, and then maybe working in a trail piece there or something too. Could we get some, like, what would that look like? And if we did a smaller amount of either land or I know Donovan, you said that calculation is a little bit more complicated, but is there a little of both option? I don't know.
This is Doug. I don't know that holding ponds are a park. So getting unbuildable land that's neither suitable for putting park equipment on is really what we would have in mind. I think having green space there with ponds is fine if the developer wanted to do that. I don't know, taking it as parkland in lieu of the payment seems to me we are acquiring cash drain in form of a new park that we don't have money for, and there's nobody else who's going to put any park equipment, a gazebo, picnic tables, a couple of swings, whatever, for the tot lot. So leaving it as green space can be the developer's decision. The trails are great, but I don't, if you can't afford to use it or treat it as a park, why would we take the land?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Donovan, but I believe what you said the formula would take into account is that those storm drain areas would not count towards the park dedication. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
They would be essentially more open space, and they could be adjacent to the park. So it kind of with an apparent increase in the park size, but no, they wouldn't be officially part of the park.
So I think and to your comment earlier, you hadn't done the actual calculation or the math. I think that's certainly something we would want to look at, is what is the calculation? What are we going to, get? And is there an opportunity to do some sort of split, whether it's, more of the trail piece, a more completed park versus just open space, or whether it's money and land, and some sort of land combination. So I think that would be, from my opinion, that's what, I would like to see more information on.
And when you say calculation, are you saying calculation of the land and what the revenue would be, or what are we calculating?
No, I'm saying, from what I'm hearing, maybe I heard wrong, but that there, when you take, what that calculation of overall acreage, you said 4.9 acres, but then now some of that's going to actually not be part of the park. So then you have that, and what's that value with that calculation of value, and what is the dedication versus how much land and then improvements that we could have. You know what I'm saying?
So the calculation would be the value of the land that we would get. Is that, I'm missing it.
Know what, if we're gonna take some land, some cash, that calculation, what that looks.
Okay. Okay.
Jamie, from my opinion, when you summed it up, that's exactly what I was thinking. So I would be in favor of the notes that you took.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I'm just trying to do my screen share really fast here. So Donovan, I think what they're getting confused on maybe a little bit is just here where they're used to the calculation of $2,500 per unit for the park dedication fee, if that's something that's taking the cash. But I think that they're maybe not as familiar with this piece here with the 10% of the land or equivalent market value. Is that the calculation you're referring to? And Donovan referring to that this wasn't quite that 10%?
Certainly.
Right. I mean, I think Paul, I was, I think Paul, Brueggemann, the developer here, I mean, he may be correct that in the end, what we're talking about is just land. And with, I would say with trails also, but, but that's one option. I mean, I guess you could, basically it's three buckets here. I mean, one is simply a land dedication, and that's the 10%. There is land plus improvements, or it's simply fee in lieu of, and that's kind of, in a large sense, that's what the commission's role here is, to decide which bucket are you pulling out of. And it seems like the way the conversation is going, you want to kind of pull from the middle one, some land dedication plus improvements. And maybe I'm thinking of trying to provide some feedback to Paul here, and Kelly Jordan, the surveyor, who's also part of the call.
Donovan, can I just jump in here real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Could you put your plan back up that you originally started with?
Yeah.
And here's just an idea, and it's going to be similar to the summer fields, but where the Headwater Parkway comes in and makes its at the very lowest right portion. First of all, I want to say something. Where this park is shown is the highest, best land that we have in the development in this site. It's not low, swampy, unbuildable, not good. It's great. Okay, so someone made the comment that you didn't want, not good land. This is great land as far as this neighborhood is concerned. But if you go down to the very lower right, where our road dies into the Headwaters Parkway, would you? That's kind of a central portion, if you will, of the 120-ish to 100 to 200 acres that we're looking at developing on this whole area, of putting in a park across on the south side of Headwaters Parkway that would be land improvement, a combination for this whole area. Maybe it's 5 acres of land with X amount of dollars of improvements, and it's completed. And it would be a central located park in our development. It's, I think it shows better, and it's more accessible to everybody if it's on the main road. Again, that's kind of similar to like we did in Summerfields. If you ever drive through there, there's a huge park. I don't know, is that something that you guys would be receptive to?
So are you saying that would be part of a next development or?
Yeah, a next phase. So we're moving from here, and then we're moving down south to the next 40, which is to the left of our, almost straight south of this development. And then the next phase would be moving to the east to that next 40.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So where Headwaters Parkway curves there, that's kind of the triangle of 340 acres, if you will. The one that we're looking at right now, the one that's south that is undeveloped, where the two roads go down and they dead end into nothing. That's another 40. And then just to the right or to the east of there is another 40 acres. And so what I'm saying is maybe, so you're not just park and you're not just money, maybe we put in a developed park, in my opinion, would be kind of in the central area of our development, but it would be a complete park. And then we would develop this park, we would put homes in it in this phase. So, we'd pay our park dedication fee, but then when we come back and develop the park that is, in that southeast curve, if you will, we would take that money and put it into those improvements.
So you're saying the next developments would be money to put into that improvement, which would improve the entire area?
Correct.
Into the improvement of the next development, right?
Oh, so
No, be part of
I don't
it.
know how I can, maybe you can help me, Donovan. Let's just call this, it's a gross of 60 acres, but there's a lot of wetlands. So it's about a 40 acre buildable that is in yellow to you. Okay. If you move straight down to the bottom of that page, there's another 40 acres there.
Yeah, we just,
Yeah.
And then if you move,
here.
there you
There
go.
we go.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
you go straight down, it says future residential. That's roughly another 40 acres. And then to the right, see where it says future development. So what I'm saying is where Headwaters Parkway is coming in and it makes a curve to the south there or to the right, or, as you're heading west, right there, put approximately a 5 acre park with improvements. Donovan, can you move your cursor up? Yeah, right in that bend of the corner, right there.
Right there.
Yep, right where he has roughly put a 5 acre park in there with improvements as part of these 3 parcels once as they're developed. Or, I guess that would be my preference. Yes.
And with improvements would be money that would be used for all the park, for all of the sections, all of the proposed and the future development.
Well, it would be the park dedication
Right.
fees that were generated from these homes that would be
Right.
put into the improvements above and beyond the land in that area.
Right. I think there's lots to think about yet.
Would we be able to, I just going back to the other area, I think one of the things we find ourselves in right now is we've got all these kind of hodgepodges of little pieces of land, some not little, we can't sell them and we struggle to develop them. Would this be land, if we were thinking 10, 15 years down the road and wanted to shed it, is it sellable land? Is there value? Would this be something that somebody would want to purchase? Or would it be difficult to sell because there would be a drainage pond somewhere on it or?
Well, it looks landlocked too by the
Well, I think the question is if it's dedicated parkland, forever parkland.
I don't think you can, as far as you can ask Donovan, but I don't think the city can take, once it's dedicated parkland and then sell it. I don't know that. That's out of my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can.
But we have land that, I don't know. Okay, so Donovan, when you kind of get Jamie's list, can you also get, if there was 120 lots there, which is what it is now, that would be $300,000. If we forego that land, how many more additional homes would be there and what would be the new revenue as well that we would be foregoing when you do the other calculations?
I can get you that number. You know, and this is all really preliminary. Because, you know, it's just a concept, but certainly that's possible. And we, you know, do have a meeting later this week with the project team to kind of, you know, chart some next steps. And maybe at that time, I'll even, you know, have, you know, they'll produce something that, or even have something in their back pocket of, you know, where they've thought, you know, it seems like, you know, Paul's, you know, is a very experienced developer, and they've probably gone through a few iterations of this plan, where, you know, we can get you, but yeah, we can get you that number.
It would be nice to see, like I said, with the kind of going back to Doug's point, where this drainage pond's going to go and what is actually usable there and what that drawing looks like as well. It's kind of like when we did that swap for the wooded area down by the library. We said, you know, you got to leave the trees, number one. Number two, we didn't want to swap it for the swampland around the corner. I just want to make sure that we're not getting what is actually usable here.
Yeah. You know, and I am, you know, I don't mean to design their project for them. It's something that the city engineer had mentioned that you know, and I'm just going from my experience of looking at the land, how it's sloped. It would seem like it's gonna be a lot of stormwater that's gonna be running to the east. And yeah, I could either put it into a pipe or put it, you know, into a stormwater management facility. So that's my idea. I'm kind of getting out of my expertise there. But also just in regards to what Paul just said, I mean, if there isn't a park, any kind of parkland dedicated here, and just with the idea that there's a future park in a future phase, and there is, and this is not meant any kind of slight against Paul as a developer, but you know, markets change, but there's no guarantee that that park will come forward, just for a whole host of reasons. But just understand that, except, you know, once the city doesn't get the land, that it's gone.
I have a question for either Mr. Bergman or for you, Donovan. Just how many acres is the Summerfield Park? Do you know? Because it's huge.
Yeah, Paul, do you know?
No, I think it's about a 15-acre park.
Yeah, okay, so.
But even if you had a third of that, that's still a huge park.
Yeah.
You know, 5 acres is still a good size piece of land, but.
Yeah, I was just wondering what Summerfield, because I know that is a huge park, so.
And again, from a developer's viewpoint, I like it that it's a central part of the neighborhood, that everybody can see it, and it's a gathering area that's not tucked behind a row of houses. That's why, you know, I'm proposing that we maybe put it somewhere that it's visible from everybody, you know, on that curve. And back to the question, I would still pay the park dedication fee on the lots and wouldn't, I guess, I don't know if recoup is the right, or get that money until we were doing this development and putting the park in. So the city would get the money and hold the money until we come to do the improvements on that parkland. Does that make sense?
And I'll just add that that Summerfields Park is 10.7 acres.
Yeah, so half of that is still a huge park.
And of course, that one does have the stormwater pond on that southern part of it too.
Yeah, that's a pretty small pond, but yeah, you're right. And I don't, you know, again, as far as I know, the ponding area isn't part of the calculation for the park area. That's got to be outside of that. So if we had a 10-acre park or pond, we couldn't use that as our park dedication. We'd have to have 10 acres of land besides. So the park isn't the ponding area isn't a reduction in our parkland requirement.
Right.
as far as I know.
Yeah.
To me, it
Just a
adds,
quick-
it adds to it because it gives more space, you know, more open area around the park.
So just a quick question or point of clarification. So, with the current development and concept brought forward tonight, if we would forego the current proposal with the parkland, the 5 acres, you're suggesting one option is to pay the park dedication fee for that development, and which would include 120 plus residential units. And then you're suggesting we could look at having the parkland 5 acres be off of Headwaters Parkway where the curve is, so that that would essentially service like all 3 of your developments once they happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then we would use that money that we paid on the park dedication
Right.
fees paid, that we would be able to put that money into that 5 acres and improve it.
Okay,
Yes.
so one follow-up question then is for the potential new location on the the curve of Headwaters Parkway, and if that's the 5 acres, when would that be dedicated then to the city? Would that be with that next phase of 40 additional? Or is that something that could be dedicated sooner that?
No,
have
it
be
would be
complete?
dedicated as we do that phase, but keep in mind, you're getting all the funds. So if I don't, even if I never, let's just, like Donovan said, the market changes, right? If the world implodes and everybody stops building houses and I get hit by a bus tomorrow or whatever, you still get the park dedication fee,
Mhm.
right? So the plan would be, let's just say everything moves forward. We develop this over the next 6 years or whatever it is, that would be our plan to have not a regional park, but a kind of a nicer neighborhood park that would serve not only our 120-ish acres, but also the developed land that was already developed and the homes are existing that are right in that same quadrant, if you will. I guess I don't, am I
Yeah, that
answering
makes
that
sense.
question?
I'm not
Okay.
understanding. So if you gave us $300,000, just using that as the scenario right now, we would hold that and then give it back to you to build the park.
Do
So,
the actual improvements in the park, to build the improvements of the park.
so essentially it would be, you're just moving the money. You would be the contractor basically building the park that we would pay somebody else to build the park for. Is that right? I mean,
No, it would be no different
I'm
than
not
this.
understanding.
Well, let's just say I was developing this 5 acre park and putting in the improvements. I would be doing that as part of my development, correct? If we were only doing this one piece and the park board said, you know what, we want a park right here, but we want it developed. Okay, well, it doesn't work. So let's say we make it a 3 acre park and there's X amount of dollars left. I would make those improvements just like I did in Summerfields,
Mhm.
right? I put in the trail, I put in the
Correct.
playground equipment, I put in the trees, I put in the benches, whatever, all the improvements. I would do the same thing in my mind in a better, more central location in the center of our neighborhoods rather than in one little corner lot. And yes, and then I would get that money to attribute back, maybe the improvements. Let's just say we give you 300,000 on this phase that we're developing right now. Well, maybe the improvements are 150,000. So you only give me half of the money back. I mean, yeah, you're not going to give me money back. I mean, I guess I don't know that you'd give me money back that I don't know, Donovan, how does that work?
So I guess I can take that one if you want, Donovan, with how that works, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think I'm understanding it as Terry, he would pay the park dedication fees for this project. We would forego green space. We would take the cash. That essentially we would wait until the next phase. So that neighborhood development would be without their neighborhood park until phase 2 went into place, which could be however many years down the road. And Donovan said things could change. So that development could or could not happen, right? I mean,
Right.
that's just, we don't know if anything would change. So we would have the money, the $300,000 regardless. Essentially, that would then be available for that park improvement when that phase happens. And if it didn't, we still would have the $300,000, but then that neighborhood would be without a neighborhood park.
Right, and it
Just
would
something
forego
changed.
us from using money somewhere else, which we've done in the past, right? Because that's how we paid off Fenway was through park dedicate. So
Yes.
we use park dedication funds in places other than where the development is occurring. Because without them, we have no funding to do our other park enhancements. And
Yeah, and I think that's just
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that. That's all.
does that clarify? Are you following
I get it. Yep.
questions? Okay.
Yep.
So I think we need some more information and another version to look at with this new concept. And I think, Parks Commission's kind of leaning towards one thought of you either, like Donovan said, land and improvements in the existing area. So you have the guarantee of a neighborhood park, but you want it finished. So looking at a 3 or 4 acre park with some improvements. So what are those cost breakdowns to potentially have a completed park? Or as Mr. Brueggemann mentioned, maybe it's a second option of relocating that 5 acres for the next development and taking cash for this current project. Seems like that's where we've narrowed it down to. Obviously, the third option is keeping it as is, a 5 acre parcel, and that's really all we would get is the green space. So I think we've kind of identified 3 options.
Or a fourth option would be taking the cash and not doing
Yes.
any development.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I think we have some options, and it seems like still some questions and a little more information as a follow-up would be appropriate before we make some decisions. Does that seem fair from commissioners?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, absolutely.
If we were developing all 120 acres of this site, do you think the location that I'm proposing would be a good location for a park for this neighborhood?
The second one you proposed?
Yeah, on the end, yeah, where the one that, yeah, yes.
Just from my opinion, that one's a little bit more palatable because it's further out and further away from the other parks that we have, and it would connect with, once that's developed, it would make it, once you develop the other side of that, it would make it more accessible. But that's just my opinion.
I agree with you, Terry. I think that location is better than the one that's in the, the agenda today.
That's
The
nice
opening.
as well. I mean, just is that,
Yeah, no, I think you're going in the right direction there, Paul, on that. I think it can work to everyone's benefit here too, being that we'll get some more information on what the total number of lots will be and what all the numbers are.
okay, from 10,000 feet, I mean, it's going to be roughly 300 lots plus or minus.
In the phase 1, if you would remove that.
On all 3 of those,
Got it. Okay.
I just call them 40 acres. I mean, the one is a 60, but it's roughly 40 buildable. So roughly on all 120 acres, it's roughly 300 lots. I mean, we don't know until we get street layouts, ponding and all that stuff figured in, but it could be 280, maybe it could be 320. We don't know exactly at this point, but somewhere in that area.
Mr. Brueggemann, is 190th the southern boundary of your 120 acres?
I don't believe so. Donovan,
Wouldn't it
can you
be
help me
north of
out?
that?
No,
So
it's not. No.
I'm a 40 or 80 north of that.
Okay.
It's a 80 actually.
Yeah, I'm an 80 north of that.
All right. So that having that park, the neighborhood park would not interfere with having the regional park called for in the 2040 plan?
Right. I think this would still
Yeah.
be more of a neighborhood park,
Yeah.
not a regional park.
Right.
But it'd be centrally located in our neighborhood, if you will.
I appreciate, Jamie, if you would come back with the 3 or maybe 4 suggestions that you had, so we can all get on the same page.
One benefit I see to that last option, the larger park that services all of those, although I know things are still up in the air, right? We don't know when
Right.
those developments will happen. Is that we may then end up with one park to maintain ongoing. Otherwise, what I see happening is a request for 3 small parks.
Yeah,
Great point.
that's a good point.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's important to note because I feel like the current
Great point.
proposals very much neighborhood park servicing that direct neighborhood. But as you look at the, as we talk about the other 2 phases of this new proposed location could be more beneficial and accessible from all 3 of those phases.
And they did a wonderful job with Summerfield. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I got one last comment on it all. I don't want to lose sight of the trail piece, though. It did, looking at that first right away, Donovan, when you showed it, I was excited by it because of the trail piece. So I don't want to lose sight of that either.
And I think it's definitely, nothing that you've discussed tonight, eliminates that.
Great.
All right, so I can work with Donovan. We can work on some of these follow-up items. Timing wise, I know we're planning on having our December regular meeting. So I don't know if we can reconvene for that, if that works for you, Donovan, and your process with this.
Yeah.
Looks like our next regular meeting, we'd have December 15th, which is Tuesday, December 15th. So
yeah, that works.
okay, so we'll bring it back to the December 15th meeting with the 3 or 4 items we talked about, and we can see if that helps kind of move things along to the next steps.
Mr. Brueggerman, thank you for being here and thank you for being willing to listen to our questions.
I'm glad to be here. I
appreciate it.
appreciate your time. So thank you.
We
And
appreciate it.
we work through this. I think at the end of the day, I really like the way Summerfield's turned out with the park that is exposed. And I guess I'm hoping we can go that direction, but I know that you guys have, at the end of the day, have the final say in it. So
Thank you.
So thank you.
Definitely appreciate that, Mr. Brueggerman. And I know that it's important to have this piece considered. And I know like we've had a lot of really good feedback about Summerfield and really want to just have it be a good neighborhood park like you mentioned. So I think we're all on the same page with striving for that goal. So
perfect. We'll try to put a sketch together maybe that can show something, an area at least of about 5 acres in that for that meeting.
Thank you.
That'd be
All right,
great.
And Paul, just, there was a one thought, there's a thought that perhaps you could do some ghost platting of those other 240s. And that would actually kind of fit in with what, a potential park in that area as well.
Okay. We
Sorry,
can take a
technical
look
piece.
at that. It's just, yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks again for your time, folks. Stay safe.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.
So commissioners, we do have this as a regular agenda item. So we probably would need a motion to table to the December 15th, table recommendation to the December 15th meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Oh, that's me, isn't it?
That's
Thank
you.
you. I was waiting for you to roll call. Sorry.
Is there any
So we
discussion?
have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, you want to roll call it?
Yes. Terry Steenblock,
Aye.
Tim Miller, Doug Ramseth,
Aye.
Karen Moorhead,
Aye.
Betty Geyer.
Betty, you're on mute.
Aye, sorry. Grandkids here, so trying to keep the disruption to a minimum.
I know that.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank
All
you,
right, thanks,
Donovan.
Thanks, Donovan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, so we are on to Castlewood
All
2020.
right, so now we're moving into discussion items that don't require any action. So we'll work through these fairly quickly. I just want to keep conversation going and keep some next steps happening. So tonight to talk about Castlewood Golf Course 2020 review, I'm just going to walk you through a recent recap that we received from Foursome Golf Management. who we currently have a 1-year contract with to operate Castlewood Golf Course. So just a quick recap, we entered into an agreement with them end of March of this year, hit the global pandemic, and opened the courses as soon as we were able to. All in all, it was a smooth transition, and I think overall we retained a lot of former golfers, we acquired some new golfers, and with that, I think it's been a successful year. In our contract, we do have language in there that the operator, which is Foursome Golf Management, is guaranteed an annual profit of $50,000. So if the net profit from the operations does not meet the $50,000 threshold, then the city would reimburse the manager for the difference. So right now through November, right now we're looking at about a $30,000 net profit on the golf course. So a couple things to note with that, there are still some expenses we should see coming through in December. So those are, the final reconciliation is not complete. And so we'll have that once they're able to close out the books for the year. So again, right now we're looking at a net profit of about $30,000. It could end up being, 25,000, somewhere in that range, where the city would then, have to pay the difference to the manager. So I did want to note a couple of things with this. This year, to start the operations with a new operator, there was an expense of about $25,000 in new equipment, which is kind of an outlier one-time expense. And next year that would be projected at only like $5,000 to $7,000. So a significant decrease in that cost. This year, repair and maintenance for the equipment was about $4,500. Next year that might kind of double to $10,000, just because this year they didn't really service the equipment they purchased. It was ready to go. So there will be some repairs and tuning up of the equipment for next year. So all in all, our kind of upfront cost for equipment this year was close to $30,000. And next year we're going to see half of that cost. So probably about $15,000. So those are some of the notable, kind of one-time startup costs for this year. And also we're hoping to project that revenue will be increased for 2021. We had a lot of momentum with the golf this year, a lot of people golfing because of COVID-19, because you can do it safely. And with the addition of the clubhouse and having the liquor license right out at the beginning of the season versus midsummer, we hope to have some additional revenue there. So I just wanted to at least kind of talk about this tonight, kind of some thoughts on from what your experience was with the golf course, given some of this information tonight. Ultimately, we really need to start thinking about and discuss if we're going to move forward in a new contract with Foursome Golf Management, and if not, what alternatives are. But just a reminder that as we started this process earlier this year, last year the net profit was about $14,000. We had a really difficult. We had no responses to an RFP, and just a lot of challenges there. So I do feel, optimistic that the net profit or revenue was higher given the, upfront cost and expense that we had. And just for discussion tonight as well, if we do think about a new contract with Foursome Golf Management, thinking about the term of that contract, I know a 1-year contract was appropriate for this year, but considering a 3 or 5 year contract, they can secure staffing better that way. We are setting up a more sustainable operation. And just one last note is if this parkland or this golf course is forever parkland, so it's either a golf course or it's some other parkland. And if we don't have somebody operating it like we do with Foursome Golf Management, even if our annual investments anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000, you'd have to consider what our costs would be if we were solely operating or maintaining something there. So a lot of information. Happy to talk through it tonight, and ultimately just looking for an open discussion. If we want to start contract discussions with Foursome Golf, now would be a good time to start thinking about that. So we aren't in a situation like we were earlier this year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, just open discussion tonight on any feedback from this year and thinking ahead to 2021 and beyond. So with that, do you have any questions?
Well, given our experience last year in trying to find someone who was willing to run the golf course, I don't know that there are many alternatives available to us. So do you see with COVID and the increased golfing that we've seen, I don't know. I think that I don't know that there'd be more people interested in running a golf course than there were last year. So we're probably be a best situation to get a 3-year contract, I would think, something of that nature.
Could you do a 3-year contract with the ability to renew for 2 additional with a flexibility?
Yeah, we can, there's certainly options to have the option to renew after however many years. So I think, you know, if we're 3 years is good, we can talk to Foursome Golf about that. See, you know, we would go into the contract negotiations if we're interested in working with them again. I can't say enough good things about their operation, their reporting, professionalism, and really have done a lot with the website and social media. And I feel like, you know, and just in year one, in a crazy time, hitting the ground running, you know, they came in and started up operations very quickly and efficiently. So I feel like there is an opportunity to do some more targeted market research and outreach to hit certain groups to drive up new customers and retain and continue to build on that base of people coming to the course. So, you know, I think, like to Doug's point of how many other people out there are even an option. And so, I mean, there's a lot of great things about it. I think just the conversation, knowing that they do have the net, you know, guarantee net annual profit of what was currently in our contract at $50,000. And again, I haven't discussed contracts with them, so I'm assuming that would be about the same. But ultimately looking to see if we start negotiating some new contract terms with them.
You know, this was a very emotional thing that happened with this. The whole thing was very emotional, and I think they handled it very well. I think the fact that we saw more compliments and kudos about the golf course on social media and other platforms versus complaints, because this was a pretty significant change and shift for the community. I think that says a lot about them. I feel like there was more transparency when we asked for reporting information. It was immediately and readily available, which gives me comfort to be able to have access to the numbers if we need them. And I think it went really well. And to Doug's point, I'm not sure if we would find anybody better. And at least this year they proved themselves well, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think looking at another 3-year deal with them with, like Terry said, the option, hopefully on our end would be to add a couple more years would be a great idea.
I agree too. And certainly I always have heard Castlewood was built up with the previous manager. And that's what made it kind of an emotional, because a lot of people in the community really, really liked the golf course the way it was run. Now, I don't know the reporting back to the city part, but as far as the community members, that was a good job. I think I've heard just as many, maybe even better, because they took over at a very hard time and did a good job. They also have a lot more benefits with the contract that we gave them. And I hope, they would appreciate that, the new clubhouse with the ability to have more amenities there, and their experience, their 50,000 guaranteed. I don't see a problem with 3 years, because I think they proved themselves for the first year. But I would like it to be 3 with an option, not to go to 5 right away. And yeah. I also, I think we have to at some time talk about the communication between the golf course the management, the parking lot, and the neighbor next door, Stella's. I think to keep open conversation with them would be in everybody's best benefit.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I think that all sounds, any other comments on any of this? I just had one more thought too, as I know, as we are talking about our park planning and our goals and objectives, you know, I know obviously access and developing a sustainable operation, ones that can eventually, hopefully, be self-sustaining and potentially generate revenue. And, you know, I think in 1 year, happy to see the numbers. I know there was some startup costs. I think to have something truly be profitable, to give them a year or two is is reasonable. It's going to take a little bit of investments and startup and getting transferred over. We did have the contract language, and I think this would remain, that if the net profit ever exceeds the $50,000 annually, the manager and the city shall split the excess profits at 50-50. And so at some point, you know, I think given another year or two, with the clubhouse and additional revenue opportunities, and year-round offerings, you know, I think if this could get to be a profitable endeavor, we now have a sustainable and revenue-generating golf course. So we also noted in our contract that if that's the case, any revenue the city would receive would go back into improving the golf course. So then we have we're starting to build some funds to maintain and improve the golf course for the future. So optimistic, and that's our goal. And I think this would align with some of our strategies we've discussed in developing revenue and sustainable operations. So with that, I can work, you know, in the next few weeks here before our next meeting, have some conversations with Foursome Golf Management and even see if they could develop a projected budget for 2021 so that we can factor in some of these costs that I mentioned, where we're not going to have as much expense for equipment, but our repairs might be a little bit more, and do some projections so we can kind of see what we might estimate 2021 to look like.
Amy, may I ask one more question?
Sure.
Being it is park land, any improvements that made, I was approached by a member of the community on, you know, did I vote on that? And we didn't vote on the new clubhouse. Doesn't say whether I'd be for or against it right now, but I'm saying if it's a park, isn't it proper that we would be involved in the decision-making with what goes on or off there from here on out?
Yes, and that is the normal process. I think some of this was operating under the emergency orders with the COVID-19 pandemic and the CARES funding. So that kind of was outside of our normal process due to timing. But yes, any other improvements or things like that that would relate to the golf course would come to the Parks Commission, Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission. For example, the fencing around the perimeter of the golf course has been a question lately of what do we do with that? Do we take it down? Do we repair it? That would be something that I could bring to you to decide, you know, by next spring. Is it, you know, get your input on how we handle that. Do we want to take it down or leave it? And that would funnel through the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission.
I appreciate that. It's just not good to be blindsided about what we decided should be there and what shouldn't. So it would be just helpful to make sure everybody's included.
Karen, I just want to note, you weren't at the meeting when we talked about the clubhouse. So it wasn't a vote item, but it was an informational, and we were asked to provide feedback at that time. So just throwing that out there. I said on social media to one person that I voted for it. Voting was probably the wrong terminology, but when Patrick brought that forward as part of the package with the other things, we did have an opportunity to chime in. So not an official vote, but.
What is the status of the clubhouse? Is it underway, being built?
Yes. The sewer connection has been complete. They've poured the concrete slab, and so everything is set to go. They're just, the next step is building it, which I believe is going to happen in the near future here. So, but they did complete the sewer, and I think there was a water and sewer hookup, poured the concrete slab, so the foundation is ready, and then the next step is building. I don't have an exact timeline.
Is the CARES Act paying for the entire thing?
I don't know the answer to that just because I haven't been closely involved in the CARES funding. That's been kind of allocated to our emergency management team and city leaders. I believe it's covering all of it or most of it, but I'd have to find out because I've had, as you'll hear in my staff update, I've been pretty busy in some other areas. So this is one that I've not been involved in.
Okay.
When
Thank
I-
you.
I
To that
do-
level of detail, I should say. I've been involved in a high level.
When I do remember the meeting that I was at, there was a conversation about this is what's being done. But at that time, it didn't appear to me that conversation would be to change it or fix it. It was pretty much the money was there and that's what they were going to use it for. So it's a done deal now. I'm just saying if it is Parkland, that when improvements are made or things are done, I think it would behoove us to want to have some information on yay or nay.
Noted. Thank you.
All right, so
Go
are we at
ahead,
the
Terry.
Belts? Are we at the Belts Park Master Plan review?
Yeah, if there's no further questions on this, we can move on to that. And so just want to pull this up here quick. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to kind of go through this quick. I want this on our agenda tonight as a discussion just to get everyone on the same page with our next steps with this. I know at a recent meeting we talked about we're planning for the future, but we also need to get some things done that are on our list right now. So we all agreed that continuing the conversation with the Belts Park Master Plan and executing at least one phase of that as our goal for 2021 with funding that we currently have available, whether it's park dedication fees available, the Rotary donation, and any other grant opportunities that we have coming up in the near future. So I included in the packet. I just want to go over this quick tonight as a quick discussion, just to make sure, again, we're all on the same page. Anticipate being able to start getting some quotes put together more specifically. Maybe that didn't get in there, but let me just pull this up for 1 second here so I can share it with you guys. But Doug and I had met, and I think our main focus right now and the biggest response from the community was the shelter. And we agreed that there's already, the playground equipment is still sufficient. People are playing with it. We can keep that as is for now until we have more funding available. So here, let me just pop this up here really quick. Okay, 1 second here. You think after a few Zoom meetings, you're a little more quick to navigate, but not always. Okay. So just tonight, just to discuss, just so we're on the same page, here is the 3-phase approach for the Belts Park Master Plan. Phase 1 was the accessibility and playground improvements. So I highlighted the total cost was about $400,000. The phase 2 was the pavilion and entrance, which totaled right here about $769,000. And then the phase 3 improvements were the sports facilities, which was $669,000. So given that, that's kind of the breakdown if we would do the phased approach. And kind of going back up here to the phase 2 pavilion and entrance, I think there's some things we could really look at to strike out of here. I struck out the playground equipment on the slope. That's $8,000. We probably really don't need this park entrance sign for $5,000 because we already have a Belts Park sign, and I think that's sufficient for now. So just kind of looking at this is for discussion tonight. Does the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission agree that we should move forward with this being our focus, fine-tuning this cost estimate and bringing forward some actual proposals for what this cost might be? Because right now you'll see here, part of the master plan, it was estimated that the new building would be about $500,000. And that could be, in reality, when we start looking at actual designs, I think that there's an opportunity for that to be reduced depending on how detailed or not we get with that pavilion structure. And I know from the high school group and the many conversations we had as a committee with the church, St. Peter's Church, I think there's some unique features and amenities that we'd want to make sure we include in that pavilion. So it's not just a basic pavilion. There was some extra features that were recommended. So for discussion, I think if everyone's in agreement on, let's focus on this and see how we can make this be a reasonable and realistic project for 2021 for next year, then we can fine tune this and see if we can get a more accurate estimate with just this being our focus right now. So with that, I'm happy for any discussion. If you guys are in agreement or if there's anything else you want me to look at, but otherwise I'd like to start honing in on our what we'll call our first phase of this project at Belts Park.
So
I
Jane,
agree.
who, if we decide we want to, I agree. I think we could make some adjustments to this, specifically the building, to get the cost down. Do we send that back to the engineer? Then is that who we hired to set this in the first place? And if so, what's the cost to that now?
Well, that's a good question. I think given where we're at with this cost estimate, I think that, I could look into some of the companies that build and construct facilities. I can look into some of that to see, what some designs are. I don't think I need to have them source that out per se. They put this in there as a placeholder, developing this whole cost analysis. The city engineer would work, they would have insight on the mobilization, the grading, the concrete work, things like that. That's all items that I think are probably pretty set in stone for costs. But the pavilion structure itself, if we want to see what we can get for a $300,000 budget, I can certainly source some options out with different companies as a starting point to see, and then we may have to work with them a little bit.
Sure.
So I would have to find out, and
Yeah, I was just wondering if this goes back to I forget the name of
Bolton and Mank.
Yes. Or are they done? They've done their portion of it, and
I feel like if I, looking back to my notes, I feel like they've accomplished everything except maybe they didn't attend, there was a set number of meetings that they would attend. So I can see, circle back with them to say, here's where we're at, here's where we want to go for next year. Do you still owe us anything? Are we complete with this project? And if we need to do anything additional with them, what those costs would be. I would say it's pretty minimal. And maybe some of it just falls into our city engineer costs that we have, but I can find that out. But I think the big thing is sourcing the building, and that's work that I can do with different companies.
sounds good.
We would look at incorporating the utility connections, right? And the plumbing piece of it.
Yeah, so this would include the water and sewer hookup. So we would have actual bathroom facilities with the option to have the running water if we had like a little kitchen, or obviously for the bathrooms anyhow. But yeah, it would have a water and sewer hookup, which is not too far off, and that would be something that looks like, looking at the estimate, we'd have to include that. But some of these, they have costs in here about with the trees and the shrubs and mulch. Those are just things that maybe the city has a resource that we can get a good price with. So I'm not so worried about some of those costs. I think the main thing is the water, sewer, and the building of the structure.
I like that idea. It includes everybody that we were talking about what they wanted first. And I think it would be a big step forward to show them that we're moving forward for them, that their time wasn't wasted.
Yeah, and I was thinking as we get in the next conversation, the next discussion item, we can talk about the playground portion of this, if that's something that we build into the 10-year financial plan and have Belts Park be one of the first playground improvement projects as part of that. So I think that might align well with that strategic plan that we've discussed for the 10-year planning. So I think it just makes sense to to build this facility, especially given, I think we're going to be dealing with COVID for, for a while into 2021. And I don't know yet where like this timeline could fall with construction and everything, depending on funding and whatnot. But if, it could be a nice facility to have at least summer of 2021, if that's even feasible. It really would provide a nice space for the community.
Right.
Well, and if we go with this first and we do this right, it is one of, I would say, our first opportunities to have a little bit more premier rental facility like, Dakota County and West St. Paul has. And so there's some potential revenue here that could be reinvested into the other phases too. Because we really don't have a premier park facility rental option.
Right. And I know another, and Doug can comment if he, has additional comments, but I know that the other piece was the tennis courts and pickleball courts. And we could potentially look at, if we're going to wait on that just a little bit longer, to see what the cost would be to just repair those with our operating maintenance budget next year, just to make those a little nicer. I mean, that's just an option. I'm not saying we have to do that, but we could look into that to see, it might be a small cost to make a little improvement on that piece as well. And then build in the playground improvement into the 10-year financial plan. Hopefully for like, maybe that's our first one and we project that for 2022, for example. And then I would say then, we'd be able to, if we, as we talk about the 10-year park plan, maybe the phase 2 and 3 for Belts Park is our request for 2022 for the 10-year financial plan. So we figure out how much we want for the playground and how much we would need for the other improvements. And then that would be the first on the list for 2022. And if that's funded, then we essentially have the Belts Park project completed. And that gives us something to accomplish next year. And then I know one conversation we had is, let's not do this in phases, because how are we going to know we're going to eventually finish it? And I think if we have a strong case to city council that we want to complete this project, so we'll need, that's our request for our 2022 in the 10-year financial plan.
I think it's a good idea in the interim to do some of the repairs on the basketball and tennis courts. Then nothing major, just something that makes it playable. And those would be next on phase 2 with the playground equipment, which is still serviceable as phase 3.
Yeah, and I think, I think if we keep this on our forefront of one of our big project in the 2021/2022 with the 3 phases, there could even be other opportunities. I know we're going to a lot of uncertainties with COVID-19 and the economic impacts and how that's going to affect the community and businesses. But, if there was some groups or, an organization that wanted to, have some signage or naming rights to a basketball court or whatever it might be. I've seen many courts develop that are done wonderfully, and it's from contributions of 15 to 20 groups, people, or organizations that funded it. So, we could, also look into something like that, and, we'll build this when we have the funding for it, kind of thing, and help see if we do any kind of fundraiser. So there's other things we can think of to get that done sooner if we're waiting on the funding, if that makes sense. So
I think getting funding any way we can is great.
yeah. And so we'll see what, maybe somebody will want to give back to the community. And I think the outdoor space as we go into spring next year is going to continue to be very popular, and there's going to be such a huge need in the community. So if there's organizations or groups that are able to support that, I think that they, that might be an opportunity. So just wanted to, any other comments? If we're in agreement, then the next steps on this is I will look into specifically, getting some quotes for a building, so I can bring some ideas forward that we can take those maybe 2 or 3 options and discuss what we like or don't like, or where we need to modify from there. But keep this as our focus, is getting that new building constructed. Does everyone seem fair? Does that seem like a good plan?
I agree.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Agree.
Thanks
All
to
right.
you and Doug for doing the work on that.
Yeah, Doug's been a big help in this project, so we'll continue to talk and work through some of the nitty-gritty details so that we're making sure we take into consideration all the feedback from the community, especially the youth group who helped kick off this initiative, so that we can make sure we recognize them in this effort, as we focus on some details here. So we'll be talking, Doug.
Good.
All right, so we have the 10-year park planning schedule.
All right, so just wanted to, again, kind of the same thing, as kind of keep focused on our 10-year park plan schedule and next steps. I didn't quite get where I wanted to, but in my mind, just thought that in our December meeting, I think we should talk about, at one of our last meetings, we said, how do we prioritize where we go from here, and which group do we start with to really drill down into what that's going to look like. I think Betty commented that she wouldn't even know where to start because we have so many different categories. I think in essence of time, I feel like starting with the park replacement plan might be the quickest and easiest, with a short turnaround in December. And then I was going to propose that in January, after the new year, we sit down with our city engineer for the trail piece, because I think that's a good time for them. It's not as busy. I think we need a little more time for them to plan and get things ready, because I think having some information prepared in advance of that meeting will be really helpful. So we don't need to talk through the whole schedule. I can email you that, but I was thinking we can kick off with, one of the easier buckets, just that don't take a lot of time and preparation on my end, just because I do have quite a bit on my schedule right now. So it can be, the park replacement plan, or it could be something simple of, the community events, and talk about that and try to put a budget together. So, and then January, I was going to pencil in for the trails. Is there any, I guess my last comment would be, by our December meeting, I can lay out a timeline with the dates and topics that we can discuss, so that we stay on track for having a completed financial plan by July of 2021 at the latest. So we're ready to present in alignment with any budget requests. So just need a little more planning time here. And I just want to make sure that we get on the same page and move forward with this, so we don't lose sight of meeting some deadlines on this. The city council did talk about and had a first look at a draft 10-year financial plan last night. And aside from a couple small placeholders for recreation, there's nothing else in the 10-year plan right now for parks. So they are waiting for us to identify our priorities and what those costs would be. So again, talking about Belts Park, if we want to include the playground replacement project in that, we would have to identify specifically what we want to do for that playground and put a price to that. So that would be one item in the financial plan. And then we would need to build that out through 2030. Go ahead, Terry.
I expressed my disappointment in the plan last night. So if you all get an opportunity, you might want to go back and watch it. But I am going to the workshop or the meeting next week to be able to express my concerns there publicly as well. There's really no excuse for, when you look at what was brought forward to the council for the first time, there were estimations, nothing concrete there. But when we're bringing forward building a new public works building and building a new fire department, but we can't add anything into that 10-year plan for the staffing that we have asked for. For example, they know that we have a belt plan sitting out there at 1.8 million. There was nothing in there for that either. And when I hear Patrick make comments such as that we're the stepchild off to the side. And if we were added into that budget, it would make the picture look worse. It's extremely disappointing to me. And so I am going to go to the meeting and express my disappointment in at least not having something added in there. We spent this time walking through our buckets of things. There are clearly some things in there that could have had estimated prices attached to it. And I'm disappointed. And it's concerning to me when, again, it's part of the strategic plan is to make parks a priority, but there couldn't be anything included in the 10-year financial plan other than $60,000. It doesn't, and I get it. I'm not asking for us to, I don't want us to raise taxes, but we can't, it's either going to be an investment and it's going to come somewhere and something else is going to give, or it's not. And somebody just needs to tell us that, and we'll sit back and do nothing and let things continue to deteriorate. But I just wanted to share that. I'm incredibly disappointed. I expressed my disappointment, and I would encourage you to go back and watch last night's meeting. Mara did bring it up. Is there anybody who is not represented here? And she specifically pointed out parks, which I appreciate, but I don't appreciate the other columns. If we add parks in, it's just going to get worse. I expect more. So just throwing that out there.
Any other comments or questions, concerns?
Well, that's very concerning. I will be watching that here and will echo your thoughts. They sat and told us that we were a priority, that parks, they want to make parks part of the priority. And to your point, without funding, and adding funding, and just in hearing what you're saying and my thought, that's unnecessary, very concerning to me. And I'm not for raising taxes. I can tell you.
I'm not either. I can tell you without a doubt.
And running for council recently, it's one of the biggest fears in this community is that taxes are going to be increased because they're already high enough. And they need to figure out how they can get funding into the parks and then accomplish the other things that need to be accomplished as well.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. I will say, I know that this is the first look at a financial management plan, and I know it's going to adapt and change. I know there are some things that are going to cost quite a bit of money in the Parks and Trails department. I think they're waiting for, what those projects are going to look like more specifically and a more accurate estimate. So I know our task is to continue with that process and put our requests in for the financial plan and make sure that they get in there and continue to advocate for parks and trails. I do think as we continue in this process and we look at not only what our priorities are, identify them and put a cost estimate to it, I think we need to also be strategic in what year we're projecting those projects to take place in. I know that there's a lot of conversation around, these numbers and not wanting to increase the taxes. So one key to that, and this is a very conservative report at this time, but obviously one of the number one things when people are looking to move to a community is they ask about the parks and trails amenities. So I think strategically, it might be worth considering some of our park and trail investments in the next 5 years so that we can improve our park system and make it a more desirable place for people to want to come live here. And hopefully that'll increase the tax base to offset some of those other costs for the second half of the financial plan. So thinking strategically on when we, want to make some of these investments for parks and trails. I do think January will be really helpful for the trails conversation. Our city engineer, Ryan Goodman, spoke last night. He's done a fantastic job securing trail development throughout the community over all these years in conjunction with street projects. So utilizing and leveraging state funded or grant projects when they're developing streets, he's incorporated trail developments. So what I'm going to have them do is put together a map of all the segments of trails that we have, so we can look at it in January to see where those gaps are. So if we finish this trail connection, you know, what trail connection pieces do we need to fill so that we have some significant or meaningful connections in the community and get that priced out. So I think that'll be helpful to see. So I think there, you know, maybe we'll be surprised at how, you know, the trail development that is happening. There's also a big significant trail connection coming up on the Highway 2097 project. I believe that's slated for 2023, and Ryan will be able to speak to that more. But I think working through that with him in January will be really helpful. But we will get our projects identified, priced out, and included in the 10-year plan. But definitely any, you know, just want to make sure that we're continuing this conversation and that we keep moving ahead for our next steps and stay focused on this. So,
Commissioner Steenblock, I just want to make one mention. It kind of falls into the expense guide. First of all, I will make my opinion known, because when our Patrick Casey was, you know, running for that job, he told me, I was very active on the school board, and he said that parks and schools are the #1 things that a community should look to, because that's what builds families and brings people in. So I'll remind him that he told me that, and put in my 2 cents worth too, that parks are very, very important. But one thing I just wanted to put before I have to go to another Zoom meeting for the school, we're not having any more talk about buying the restaurant at this point, with all the other things going on. Is that, I haven't heard anything, so I'm assuming that that's gone. And I guess for now, for my own benefit, I would have to say I would hope it's gone, because of the whole situation of who's got what money.
yeah, so just, I know you have to head off, Karen, and I can follow up with you separately if needed. But, you know, Commissioner Gary, he and I have had a couple conversations on it, just given the nature of his work and his familiarity with that product, or that parcel or that building. We haven't gone in great detail. I wouldn't say it's completely gone, but it's just an interesting concept. I know Mayor Bain had suggested we looked at some other similar models with municipal facilities that have a contracted restaurant service. So we haven't dug into the nitty gritty of that, but so I don't think it's completely gone, but I think there's an interesting concept there. Maybe not what you're thinking of, it's all city expense driven or whatnot. So I'm happy to talk to you about that if you want to give me a call tomorrow.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for your time if you have to head out.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? But just so you all know, we'll keep this on our forefront, and I'll put together a calendar, a schedule, so we can follow that and make sure we are staying on track with things.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on this from you guys?
No.
Nope, I think we're moving on to the staff updates, the Forest Lake Senior Center and communications.
I know it's getting a little late, so I'm going to run through these. I'll give a quick update. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I can kind of go through them here fairly quickly. So Forest Lake Senior Center, as you guys are aware, that the former coordinator hired from the Forest Lake Seniors Inc. has retired. So this senior center operations are going to roll into the city, and we're in the process of transitioning that. I've spent a significant amount of time navigating this transition, going over weekly, once or twice a week, attending their board meetings, getting, you know, addressing any mail or inquiries that come in. So it's been time consuming, but we're working through that. But ultimately, we had a board meeting with the Forest Lake Seniors Inc. group this last Thursday. And due to the increasing cases of COVID-19 in the community, it was recommended by the city and agreed upon by the Forest Lake Seniors board that we are going to close the center for the foreseeable future until further notice, just to keep that high risk population and everybody safe. Really, it's just too risky to be out and about right now. So the minimal operations that were happening are going to be suspended. This allows the city some extra time to transition and get kind of transition over to the city and learn the operations, hire some staff, things like that. So we are going to close the center for the time being. The seniors board, we're going to meet again January 7th to reevaluate. So as this transitions to the city, I think it's important if there's ideas that we have to keep this population engaged, whether it's a pen pal program or, you know, start thinking of creative ideas, we can engage them to have some social connectedness, because I think this is going to be a difficult time for a lot of people as we enter the winter and a lot of people staying home again. So any questions on that? All right, so if no questions on that, the communications and recreation hiring, the city of Forest Lake did post the position for the communications and recreation position this past, I believe it was last week. So the first round of applicants to review will be November 20th. And looking to get somebody hired by the first meeting in January with city council is what we're shooting for. This person will lead the communications plan, and then also in the interim, until we have additional staffing at the senior center, they will help with some of the senior center transition to help offload some of that work from me that I currently have as well. So any questions on that? The fee schedule for 2021 parks. This is going to the next city council meeting for discussion, but I did take into consideration our feedback. We did add a resident and non-resident rate, and I was just gonna show you on my screen really quick. Here you go. So we have, whoops, sorry. The parks are right here. So anything in highlighted is just language that we changed. So I know our conversation was just that there should be a resident, non-resident rate. It's not percent based, but I know you also said a very nominal difference. So went with some, looked at what other communities offered and just did a very slight increase for non-residents. And I think that this still is a fair amount so that we still have people coming into our community, that it's not too high, that it's going to turn them away from that. So this is what's going for discussion at city council. And if there are any comments or feedback, from what you see here, you can certainly let me know, send me an email or give me a call. But I think this summarizes what commission had portrayed to me. I can zoom in a little if you want.
Jamie, can you send that to us, please?
Yes, I will. And this again is going to the next city council meeting for discussion. So you will see that the softball, baseball, multi-use fields at Fenway are still to be determined. And I did talk to Administrator Casey that, you know, we do need to spend a little time looking at other communities yet and figuring out what's a fair fee. Some communities have permits with their athletic associations. There's could be tournament fees. So that's just a lot of work to be done yet, just to make sure that it's fair and equitable and it's going to work for all parties. So that's why you don't see a cost there. We also will need to eventually add fees for the senior center. They have several rooms that they rent out. Unfortunately, I am not aware of what those fees are right now, and I'm hopeful to learn more about that in the coming months as we transition some of the operations with the city. So with that said, I think this should have otherwise captured our last meeting notes, but I will send it out to you. And I think this will be workshop or discussion, and then I believe final approval and adoption December 14th with city council. So if there's any concerns, we can address it. Any other questions?
No, I don't see any.
Okay, with that, I think we are on to just any other updates. Just other as I've, like I said, I'm helping with the senior center transition. I'm also overseeing the city's recycling grant projects right now. So a couple different things to the schedule that's really been taking up some of my time. So I was optimistic I'd get you meeting minutes today, but I fell a little short on time. So I'll get those to the next meeting. But definitely a very heavy workload right now. And with that, just still working through some changes to the tree lighting ceremony. I know Terry and I have talked, and she's helping reach out to some organizations in the community, and hopefully we'll just do some form of virtual tree lighting. But that's kind of a fluid right now, and I'm working as quickly as I can to get something sent out for the community on the tree lighting. So working as quickly as I can, but it's definitely a unexpectedly busy time right now with everything going on that's new and different. So I appreciate your patience and your help as we navigate through this. And that's all I have for updates, unless there's any questions for me.
And for me,
Nope.
And for me,
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any updates from anybody who's left or a motion to adjourn?
They're dropping like flies. I'm ready to drop you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
You can
Aye.
raise your hand. All right. You guys have a good evening. Thanks for your time.
You too. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.